Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the third and last webinar in our series. It's going to be very strange next Thursday not to be here with everyone. I can already see that many of you are back again. It's lovely to see you. And for those of us just joining us for the first time, a very warm welcome. We hope you enjoy this webinar. Huge thanks once again to Battersea for supporting this training series, and of course to Daniel for generously returning for the third time as our speaker today. So before we begin, just a few bits of housekeeping, again, to help things run smoothly. Please keep your cameras and microphones off, so muted throughout the session, and avoid any background noise or interruptions this way. We'll begin with a short introduction. I will talk a little bit about World Rabies Day as well, as it's coming up. Then we will move into the main presentation with Daniel. And as in the previous two sessions, we will finish off with 30 minutes of Q&A at the end. If you'd like to say hello or share a thought, please use the chat function. But if you have questions for the speaker, then please use the Q&A box so we don't miss anything important. We have, however, noticed that people, maybe on older versions of Teams, don't have the Q&A box. Please make sure you have the latest software for Teams. We'll use one interactive poll in this session. It will be visible in the chat, and also once you vote, you will be able to see in the chat what other people have voted as well. This session is being recorded. We'll be sharing highlights later on YouTube and some snippets on social media. So with that, I'll now go into the details for the Q&A and chat, then a little bit about this year's World Rabies Day, and then I'll hand over to Daniel to get us started. So on your desktop screens, you can see hello and comments and anything else you want to share in the chat. In the circle, you will say Q&A for any questions you may have for the speaker. That should open up a box. You post your question. You won't be able to see it until we approve it. So don't worry though, it is recorded there. Now, to have a translation function, please click More, go to Language and Speech, and show live captions. This gives the automated live captions in English. You will see at the bottom bar, Captions Enabled, and then there's the little cog sign where the arrow is pointing, and if you click on that, you get Language Settings, which when you select will give you Translate to, and you can choose your language, French, Greek, Chinese, whatever you prefer. And this is the same process, but for mobile versions, for those of you who are maybe on your smartphones. So where the three dots, usually there is the Q&A function and the live captions. And again, once you've enabled the live captions, you will get the option to choose your caption language for translation. I will now just quickly post in the chat in French the steps to enabling the translation. Okay. So now just for a few words about World Rabies Day. I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with World Rabies Day, or at least have seen something about it in the past. So every year we coordinate both the World Rabies Day theme and the events happening worldwide, and of course the World Rabies Day Awards. Now, why are we doing this and sharing it with you? Well, we want you to get excited and raise awareness. Anyone can participate. The theme for this year is Act Now, You, Me, Community. So it's a very urgent call to action. It highlights both the individual responsibility, but also the shared community responsibility. And it highlights a One Health approach. Any banners and logos relevant to this theme can be found in various languages such as Spanish, Portuguese, English, and French on the website under event resources. There is also a t-shirt design for those of you who wish to use it for your events. Now, what you can do is hold a World Rabies Day event or activity. It doesn't matter how small it may seem. It could be a coffee morning, a talk at your local youth club. It can just be a discussion with your friends. We have tiny events and we have huge events like international conferences. It really doesn't matter. Everything helps. And we register all of these on the global platform, which is essentially a map with a pinpoint for your event and information about when it will be held, where, and who the main stakeholders are. You can also nominate yourself or someone else who is working against rabies for a World Rabies Day Award. And in the very least, you can use your networks, both online and offline, to raise awareness. We also have free social media toolkits, so it's really a copy, paste, and post job. So yes, this is how we can help. So for activities, we have an event planning manual that has been redone this year for everyone to give you ideas and guide you through the process of preparing an event. The social media toolkit, which essentially gives you ready posts and graphics and the hashtags, everything for the main social media platforms throughout September. So there's posts for every week throughout September. We have modifiable posters to raise awareness, lots of other free resources. And as mentioned before, you can register any event or activity to do with World Rabies Day on the global map. In terms of the World Rabies Day Awards, you can nominate someone. If they are awarded, of course, they get increased publicity. There is a $1,500 reward towards their work. And there's also in-kind support from GARC in the amount of $1,500 worth as well. And we thank you very much, Boehringer Ingelheim, for going on this journey with us to rewarding the World Rabies Day awardees. So for more information, of course, you can email us, as always, support@rabiesalliance.org. Or you can visit rabiesalliance.org/World Rabies Day with hyphens in between each word. Thank you so much. And I shall now hand over to Daniel, if you are ready, to just recap on the past two sessions, some key points, and then move into today's session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Corinza. I really appreciate it. And it's great to see everybody back again today. I've been trying to get here fast enough because I've been out the country again, and I'm now back in South Africa and in front of my computer, which is really, really great that I actually see a number of you that I actually know that we've come in contact with you before somewhere in the world. So hi from me to you guys. So the first session, 2 weeks ago, we spoke about, or the highlighted points were dogs speak a lot. And I'm just giving you this ideas. And again, these presentations are not gospel, you know, they're ideas that I want you to think about them, look at them and go, how can we adjust our maybe education programs or learn something or think out the box about how we can actually interact with dogs. But we also need to learn to spot the early signs, respect the space, and also misreading sign leads to unnecessary conflict. That's what we discussed about in the first session. In the second session, most bites are preventable. I know a lot of people, when I do education there, they like shake their heads and they go, no, dogs just want to bite you. Well, we actually went through that whole thing about most bites are preventable. We need to read warning signs earlier. We need to teach children how to act safely. And then what about community programs so we can reduce the long-term risks? And that's what we just spoke about in the second session. So today we are going to bring that all together, and then let's see on how we can actually manage to have or understand on how we can have what our behavior, human behavior, and how their response is, if I can push the right buttons, how our behavior actually creates and connects to dogs' reactions. Now, when we're looking at it is, you know, we might come along and go, okay, I'll pet my dog and the dog's tail wags. Well, it's a reaction from our behaviors. But I really want to go into a little bit more deeply than that. So, right now, it looks like my computer's working now. So we're going to do the quick overview, how human behavior influences dog reactions, culture and regional differences in dog-human interactions, the role of body language and energy, children and dog behavior, proper handling and socialization of young puppies, training and socializing impact, and building positive human-dog relationships. I know it's a lot. We've already covered some of the stuff because I will refer back to it. But I really do hope that we all pay attention, take those notes down, because if there's any questions or even better, any suggestions, we are always open to them. As I say, with Global Alliance for Rabies Control, thought, hold on, let's bring everybody together and let's see if we can actually create a community that is all talking the same language to improve our relationships with animals, preventing conflict, and actually, of course, reducing deaths in people via dog bites or rabies. So let's go. Dogs' behavior is influenced by environment, by humans, other dogs and animals, nutrition, reproduction from a hormonal point of view, and illness and injury. We discussed a few of them, but today we're talking about primarily about the human influences. Dogs sometimes mirror human emotions and behaviors. Stress, anger, or fear from a person can escalate a dog's anxiety or even defense behavior, or simply an actual behavior. So when we're looking at this, you know, looking at the video, yes, I know it's quite funny when you see the stuff on YouTube and things, but that dog is actually now showing empathy, in my opinion. Yes, it's mimicking and engaging, but what we do sometimes actually the dog does because of what we are doing. The dog is actually taking cognizance of what we are doing. Now we're just showing the funny side of it, but there's a whole bunch of other different ideas about it. But when we're looking at inconsistent human responses, mixed signals, praises and scolding, for instance, this confuses the dogs and creates mistrust or unpredictability in their behavior. Just an example is that when I come along and I speak to my dog, I actually use hand gestures. I say, come here, and I actually bring my hand towards my body. My dog has learned that that means come. But what often I see with people, that the dog comes and they bring up their hand and the dog then runs away because they are a threat to the dog. But then they come along and say, no, come here. And the dog goes, well, this movement of your hand, what does it mean? but we are inconsistent. We don't speak the same language all the time. And if you're going to choose a word to use it. Come, stay, sit. Don't try and be smart about it. Don't confuse them. When you start creating a mistrust in a dog, you start losing the dog. And it doesn't matter if it's a free roaming dog or your own pet. Once you start having that mistrust, their behavior starts changing. And with their changing behavior, that could also influence not just you, but others as well. So please be very, very careful and think out the box about, how do I speak to dogs? How do I speak to my dog? So the physical posture and tone, and we've spoken about this in the previous sessions, but you can bow down over a dog and it's a direct threat to a dog. We saw in last session where there was a retriever and then a black and tan dog. The black and tan dog was actually stepping over the dog while the retriever was sleeping. This is an aggressive posture. Loud voices may trigger defenses or a fear reaction in a dog. Where if we actually just changed our body language, the dog's reaction will change. And that's what we're looking at today. How can we, as humans, actually change a dog's body language or body posture to be more accepting of what we are doing? In some cultures, communities, and individuals, dogs are seen as family members, friends, as pests or threats, or even staff. And you might be quite laugh about that one, but I was in Ethiopia and I stood up in front of a very large crowd of veterinarians and laboratory professionals, and we were looking at rabies control. And I said, I'm here to try and show you that we need to be able to handle dogs nicely and preferably, so we can vaccinate them in a much better manner. And they laughed at me. And I go, why are you laughing? And they come along, because our dogs in this country are only there to kill you. Now, that's a community has attitude that the dogs are there to cause harm. And I had to start at that grounding, where that was, for me, one of the most difficult times to change their behavior, their thought process about how dogs should actually be seen. So therefore, we can actually then do our job. But with most of you who have animals, they're family members. And if we're actually looking at that side of it, how would we respond to a family member? Are we aggressive towards them, or are we actually loving towards them? This guy on the screen, clearly he's a staff member, Anatolian, looking after the goats in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. And he's very, really comfortable. I never touched that dog because he wouldn't allow me to, because he didn't know me. If I grabbed a goat, he would come along and go between me and the goat, not necessarily aggressive, but he would show, because of his size, he would be able to show me. So we have this whole different scenario, but through cultures and regions, that we have different opinions on dogs, and how we interact with them would be able to defer their behaviors as such. But community dogs that might be free roaming, they might guard us, they might be our companions on the street, they might be scavenging. Depending on the region, it influences their behavior around people. I've come across so many different places where I would ask a person of a community and say, can I take your dog? They go, no. So I say to them, oh, sorry, is it your dog? No, it's not my dog. So why can't I take it? Well, because it lives here. We then ask more questions. It's a community dog, although it's not owned by anybody. And that's where a lot of people around the world get very confused when I say to them about, they go, oh, it's just a stray dog. Well, unfortunately, a lot of shelters indicate stray dogs should go into a shelter. But in areas, especially in Asia, there's a lot of free roaming dogs that are community dogs. And the community dogs actually benefit from the community that they live in. And there's a bit of a mutualism going on there where not many people actually identify it there. So you might have a person walk out, they don't own a dog, but they place a little bit of food every day that the dog is there. They'll put a bit of food on the side of the street. The dog will give them a wag of the tail. That person feels good because they fed the dog and the dog is happy and appreciative. We also found that in a country where there was a large outbreak of African swine fever, and all the pigs had to be euthanized and removed and stuff like that, the dogs became the scavengers and started cleaning up where the pigs used to. So the dogs actually prevented further disease coming in. Why? Because of our behavior, throwing that food out, because we were so used to the pigs picking it up. And our expectations around the world change. You know, what do we actually expect our dogs to be like? Switzerland, for instance, and I'm not too sure if it's only Geneva, but let's class it as Switzerland. Their policy is that every dog has to be registered and every dog has to be confirmed attending a puppy class before they get a license to own a dog. That's what the law is. So now the idea behind a dog and a dog and people is that the dog has to be well behaved, on a leash when it's out, and it's like that because that's what we expect. But in Asia and Africa, it's something different. I expect dogs to be free roaming in Africa, especially in the rural parts of it. And I'll purposely look out for it. When I see a dog behind a fence or unfortunately on a chain, that to a point sickens me and saddens me. But what are our expectations? And they vary across the world. But by better understanding and having more acceptance of dogs, it prepares the dogs and the communities for better engagement. We need to be able to look at the situation, understand the cultures, understand where we are in the world, and be able to go, what is the norm? If the norm is in a negative for the humans or the dogs, yes, we could influence their behavior by improving. But if it works, don't try and bring in European standards into an African village where the dogs actually need to be free so they can survive by scavenging. And unfortunately, it happens too frequently. What about body language and the energy that we portray? Upright stance, clenched fists, fast movements can signal a threat to a dog. Now, just last night, by chance, I approached a dog and I was actually told by someone in their house that said, oh, do you want to come in because my dog's a little bit reactive to men? So I said, well, sure. What type of dog is it? And believe it or not, it actually was a German Shepherd, a very large German Shepherd. When they opened the door, I had to step into the house. And the dog was standing on the top step. So the dog was even bigger than it actually was. And it rushed at me and poked me in my stomach. If I had not been teaching about stand still, keep quiet for bite prevention, like we did in last session, I think that dog would have attacked me because of my reaction, my body language, and my energy. That dog would have actually taken me wrongly. But then I noticed that that dog actually ran back and it ran behind the owner. And I'm like, oh, that's not aggressive. That dog is actually fearful because it doesn't know. It's never been exposed. But it looks at me and goes, well, there was no reaction. So therefore, I don't know what to do. So it excluded itself from the conversation as such. So when we're looking at calmer energy, relaxed body postures, and slower breathing, this helps dogs feel safe and reduces a reactivity. With that same German Shepherd, within a couple of minutes, the dog came along and leant into me. And if you remember in the first session about allowing the dog to have the choice to engage or disengage, I waited for that dog to come to me. It did come to me because it felt safer, because I was no threat, because of my body language, because of my calmness. And we can all do this. I just feel that so many people, especially the people in who's not in the know, the uneducated people, the people that have really never exercised a lot of interactions with dogs, they always see them as a bad thing. We always come along, or there's a really bad expression about, oh, no, we have to vaccinate dogs against rabies because they've got rabies. Dogs don't have rabies, but it's that perception that dogs carry rabies and we vaccinate them to stop them carrying rabies. No, we vaccinate them to prevent them from getting rabies. And I ask everybody out there, if you're doing anything for World Rabies Day, make sure your message is clear. We're preventing the disease. We're not stopping it in the dog. The young girl and the retriever on my left, you know, is a relaxed. If you look at the child's face, it's all calm. The dog's face is all calm. You can just see the relaxedness. But the young boy on my right, he's threatening that dog, and the dog is threatening him. Why? Because of our behavior, how humans influence the dog's behavior. If we are relaxed, the dog will be relaxed. If you are stiff and threatening, the dog will become threatening. We must understand, though, is that, and this is where I find a lot of the time, is that when people or little children particularly say they were bitten by the dog, but they did nothing wrong to the dog, it's not necessarily what they're doing. It's what's previously happening. And we must look at that bigger picture, beyond that little immediate circle that we work in. Is that if we come along and go, what happened to that dog while it was not under our control or in our close proximity? That could have been threatened by other people. It could have been abused by other people. But the moment we do something, raise our hand, maybe even just to, wipe something out of our eye or something like that, that direct change in our body language might create a reaction in the dog's body language, or the dog's reaction to us, because it thinks that we are going to be abusive, because what's happened in the past, it's a learned memory, it's a learned behavior. So we mustn't just blame everybody and blame the dog or whatever like that, but we must also be able to understand what is the dog's history, and what's the dog's history of its learning and its new and its experiences. So teaching a child to be more calm, relaxed, with softness in their face really, really helps. Now, children are unpredictable, in my opinion. I've just come back from Mozambique training 3,000 children at 5 different schools. And it's quite incredible on how every individual child actually responds slightly differently. I would try and animate a few things, and how one child would scream, one child would laugh, one child would literally shrink down under the desk because of sudden actions. The startle effect will confuse a child, will also confuse dogs, leading to a defensive reaction or trigger a predatory motor pattern. That's what you're seeing here in this video, is that the little toy pom is just running around, the spaniel is chasing, but this little Africanus over here goes, you're running, let me chase you. It wasn't part of the game, but because it ran past it, it reacted to it. So be aware of what we are doing, how we are influencing that dog's behavior, and see if we can actually improve that reaction from the dog. Because small children often squeal, wave toys or arms, fall on dogs, and this is now triggering a fear or irritation. We really do need to teach children how to behave around dogs. most of again, back into Mozambique in the last couple of days, I would ask the children, you know, put your hand up, who's got dogs? 20% of them would. Hands up, who likes dogs? 80% of them would. Next question would be, put your hand up, have you ever been bitten by a dog? And 70% of the children put up. They still like the dogs. They just don't understand why the dogs bite them. And then I'd say, well, what do you think how do you think we should stop dogs biting us? And they go, no, we just have to run faster. And I'm like, but predatory motor pattern steps in. How can we prevent that from happening? Some children think I'm absolutely crazy when I go, stand still and keep quiet. But eventually, when we start showing them and demonstrating to them, and the children think about it, and I know it's in some children, especially youngsters, we've just planted that one little seed, and we might go back next year and ask them again and see if actually anything has grown and flourished in their brains to think about how they could react differently to cause a different reaction. And that is what we are. One child actually said, no, what we do is my dad just hits them. So now the parent is teaching the child on how negatively to interact with the child, with the dogs. We need to change from a community point of view. We need to be able to change in a bigger scale, that it's simple. If we act calmly, act nicely, most dogs will do the same. Now, I'd just like to point out here, the next slide is sometimes disturbing for some people. So please don't take offense, but it is for demonstration. And if you'd like, there is a poll placed, and I would like to ask you to fill in the poll. If this child is bitten by the dog, whose fault is it? Now, you might not be able to hear the audio of the video, but I can hear the child making a few sounds because it's got a dummy in its mouth, so it's got a funny sound going on. I can hear a adult female talking out, and it's in a language I don't understand, but just the tones that she's saying. She's going, oh, how cute is this? Oh, is the dog so nice? But really, please, as we've done in the past, fill in the poll. What is your opinion? Is it the dog's fault, or is it the child's fault if that dog is bitten? If that dog bites that child? Because many incidents occur because children misunderstand dog signals, and in my opinion, no one intervenes in time. So yes, this child was bitten. I've cut the video purposely to not show you the actual attack. It is horrific. But you can clearly see the dog is not happy. Its mouth is closed. It shows the mother or the lady who's talking, white eye, whale eye. The dog lifts its head up, trying to create avoidance. And it's our influence that's causing this. So hopefully you guys have filled in the poll, and I apologize for the picture. But by teaching children safe and gentle interactions, allowing the dog or the animal to choose if it's going to stick around and be petted and be touched by the person, or the dog chooses to go, not now, let's move away. And if you also look in the picture, it clearly indicates that there's an adult assisting, the adult that also knows and has faith on how to actually interact with dogs correctly. Holding a flat hand is better than raising a hand over the dog's head. But we definitely need to train. If you see the child, he's actually looking down. He's not directly looking into the dog's eyes. He's a lot more calmer. That behavior is influencing the dog, but in a positive way. Now, this is really, as I say, an exciting part for me, is that puppies and the correct socialization of young pups, they need safe exposure to varied people, sounds, environments between a certain age group. But what we can do with puppies can influence so much in so many different ways that we must really and truthfully look at it to say, hold on a minute, is this something we can do in a community? Is this not just a owner who has to take his well-pedigreed dog down to the veterinary clinic to run a puppy class? But how can we actually change puppies born in a community in a rural part of Africa or Asia? How can we change those puppies' lives and the communities around those puppies, so those puppies grow up with a better idea and understanding of people? So let's have it closely. Look at this video. And I'm trying to now show the negative before we really go into on how easy it is to resolve this problem. Gentle handling builds trust. Rough play or restraint can cause fear or aggression in adulthood. Now, this to me, these people are way overstimulating. We discussed this in a couple of sessions before as well, about what happens if we overstimulate a dog. What could happen? And we keep on going and going and going because we think it's funny. Our behavior is going to change this dog's behavior because we're the ones that are being silly. Again, please, I apologize, but you have to see this. That is what's going to happen if we overstimulate a puppy. Don't give it proper socialization and be absolutely silly with them. And I see this so many times because we have control. The dog is just going into like shutdown mode, and we are thinking that it's funny that we can throw it around and make it do funny, stupid things, where we are forcing the dog to do that. That's what's going to happen when that happens. So please be aware of it. But let's look at positive experiences. Shaping the confidence and pairing new experiences with praise and treats. This encourages curiosity, not fear, not anything. I'm asking that dog to stand on top of that tire. And I'm just asking it being in a nice way. I'm pointing. I'm getting the dog to think for itself. I'm getting the dog to think about going, oh, well, maybe he wants me to do this. And then the dog offers me a behavior, which I'm now going to reward because that is nice. The dog has offered me something as opposed to me forcing it to do it. There's not once that I've dragged that dog up over onto the tire. It's thought about it. Because we're making it a game, because there's a reward in place for it, because it then has a reaction and a relationship with me. It wants to please. That's in itself as a reward for the dog. And of course, for me. And you mustn't forget that, is that a lot of the time when we do work with dogs, a lot of it, in my opinion, we actually get a lot of reward out of it. Although we come along and go, oh no, shame, I must help these rescue dogs and so on and so forth. Well, actually, you are also getting a reward for it because you feel good. But if we actually interact with dogs nicely, that behavior, our behavior, will create a nicer dog. What about trained dogs and in public, for instance? This is actually a coffee shop that I frequent quite frequently with my dog. That's Hera, best dog in the world. But if she's not taught to lay down, be polite, leave things alone, you'd never be able to go into a public place. I mean, there's the young man who dropped his wallet. Some dogs, you know, maybe grab it, run off, eat it. That's what people think they do. But she has been with me for a very, very long time. And I'm talking very long time. I knew this dog when she was 3 days old. 3 days old. I was asked, it was an accident, I'm going to call it. And the mother fell pregnant and she gave birth to 4 puppies. And I was just by chance in the area. And I'm like, wow. And I started spending time with this dog at 3 days old. Couldn't see me. Left a t-shirt under the litter so they could snuggle in the t-shirt, but it had my scent on it. And from that, by 6 weeks, when the mother was still feeding the puppies, I would be taking out all 4 of the pups and we were running through the farm going swimming, believe it or not, at 6 weeks of age. But she loved it. Wherever I go, she is with me, if she can be. But we're talking about proper socializing from a puppy point of view. That is proper socializing. Understanding that we can throw anything at the dog and the dog can cope with it. But again, going into public where there's no threat because the dog accepts what people do. But under-socialized dogs are high risk. Lack of positive exposure could lead to a fear-based aggression or panic. And I've had panics. I've tried to take in some dogs into a coffee shop where the dog was okay. I'm trying to read it. Next minute, the dog just has this fight and flight response and runs out the coffee shop. Now we've got a loose dog in a panic. But dogs that lack that early exposure may see common objects like hats, bikes, walkers as threats. Fear-based aggression comes out. Injury to people and the dog. But proper socialization builds confidence and coping skills. And here's a really good expression. A fearful dog isn't a bad dog. It's a dog that never got the chance to feel safe. And if you're looking at it, is that our behavior, our influences from a human perspective, if you allow the dog to feel safe, the dog won't be fearful. It'll know how to cope. It'll either move away, brilliant, but we never want conflict. And where a lot of the time, and a lot of my clients think that when they first get a dog, they come to training. And for all those out there who do train dogs, I think it's just like, we've got this magic wand that we just go, what do you want? Fearful dog, a happy dog, a confident dog, a vicious dog? Sure, no problem. Let's just program it and have that magic wand that we can just go, bam. It takes time. And why does it take time? Because the dogs watch our behavior. And if we start becoming confident, the dog follows suit. But socialization isn't just with dogs. Please remember that. It includes exposure to wheelchairs, to Zimmer frames, to hats, different ethnic groups and crowds. I often, and I'm not wearing it today, but I've always normally got my hat on. And why? I come along and I often offer the dog my hat as a scent point of view, and it sniffs me and it can get a whole big story about me a lot faster just using my hat. But I go to clients' houses where people walk in and I get out my car and they go, oh, I don't know if my dog's going to like you because you've got a hat on. Oh, I don't know if my dog's going to like you because it doesn't like men, like the shepherd yesterday. It happens where so many times where I'm like, but how long have you had this dog for? And they go, no, since it was a puppy. Why didn't you expose it to all these things? Even with my dogs, and this sounds really, really crazy, but when I've got a new puppy, the first thing I try and do is things what happens in the kitchen. You know, open and close the door. It might sound really, really stupid, but sometimes, just sometimes, we close the door faster and it bangs. Just that bang scares a dog if it's not used to it. Once you actually start building up and accepting that, the dog accepting it, you can bang all the doors you want, and the dog just looks up and goes, "What's wrong with you?" Show it the hats, revving of motorbikes, coffee shops, old people, young people, small people, tall people, ethnic groups. You know how often people look at my dogs and they'll go, and there'll be a group of youngsters, mainly teenagers, and there's a mixed genders, mixed races. And I purposely stop and I go, "Hey guys, won't you do me a favor and come and say hello to my dog?" They think I'm a bit crazy, but that I'm actually helping my dog and also helping them, because when I tell them how to do it, I tell them to go down on one knee, put your hand out. The dog approaches them because it's a unique experience. Dog looks at them, they pat them very, very gently. I might even walk behind them and give them a few treats in their hands, so they actually give the dog some treats. Now the dog looks at them and goes, "Wow, all these people look differently, but they're all nice." So Ian Dunbar, he's a behaviorist in the US, and I would love to meet him one day. So if he's out there, give me a call. He says puppies should meet 100 different people by the time they're 12 weeks old. That's a lot of people in 3 months. But this includes men, women, children, elderly people in uniforms, hats, chairs. This is what he says. The goal is to reduce fear and reactivity by normalizing human diversity early. Early. Yes, we might go along and get a dog from shelter and it's maybe had a bad upbringing and it's a little bit fearful. But if you can do it over time, it also works. It might not just be 3 months of age, but if you slowly introduce positive interactions, okay, quality interactions, you will be able to have a very sociable dog because it sees people and goes, "I don't need to worry about that." That flight zone or fight zone never comes into play. But this is what we're talking about, socialization. I have people that come along and go, no, don't worry. We don't need to socialize my dog. It'll never leave my property. They've got 3 dogs next door. I'll just toss it over the fence, let it play with those 3 dogs. It'll be great because it's socialized with those dogs. Yes, only with those dogs, not all dogs. So the more you put in front of the dog, the more and the better it's going to be for everybody. So let's have a quick look at this. Critical period of puppy socialization is 4 to 16 weeks, or give it thereabouts. Could be 18, 17 weeks, could be slightly less for German Shepherds. But puppies exposed to people and animals, environments during the time form lifelong bonds and comfort, like the Anatolian. He will come along and be happy with the goats. What they meet becomes their in-group as such. Late socialization may result in fear, avoidance, or aggression. May. As long as if you do it properly and slower, you'll still be fine. A really, really good friend of mine, Ray Coppinger, he said in one of his books on dogs, a pup raised with sheep thinks it's part of the flock. And that's where the whole concept of our livestock guardians come from. If you ever are a reader, look for his books. They're just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I really recommend it. But building positive human-dog relationships is so, so, so important. Is that we don't want our animals to come along and be attack dogs all the time. I educate people on how to prevent dog bites. I never train a dog to bite a person. We need to create trust. We have to be consistent in daily routines, tones of voice. Rules should remain steady. If the dog's allowed at the couch, fine. But don't say yes today and no tomorrow. Show kindness. Encouraging and compassionate handling. Even during training, builds confidence and emotional security. And I know some people come along and go, oh, emotional security, come on, man. You know, you guys are flying kites or something. Animals have emotions. It also creates predictability. Dogs thrive when they can anticipate what comes next, what's the routine next. If I'm at home at 4 o'clock, we go for a walk with our dogs. They tell me what time it is. It reduces this anxiety and promotes stability. But we also have to start respecting boundaries by letting dogs approach and disengage freely. I teach when people, especially at schools, I say, well, go down, put your hand out. You don't go down and walk up to the dog. You put your hand out. If that dog is keen to say hello, it will approach you. What we must be very, very careful of is if you are walking with your dog and someone says, can I say hello? Don't force the dog to go and say hello. You go, sure. Go down on one knee, put your hand out, and I will tell the dog it's okay to go and say hello, but I will not drag it to you. The dog doesn't want to. It doesn't want to. Don't force it. Use clear, fair communication through body language and tone. I'm saying fair. Don't force it. Mutual respect matters. And I want to keep on reiterating this, is that when we are educating other people and when you're looking at it, try and create it. People don't understand. They think that humans have the right to be controlling. Yes, well, we want our dogs to be behaving. We want our dogs to stop being a nuisance. We want to, but just take it to the side and start working with it really, really calmly. You know, many, many years ago, I was in a township in a very rural area of South Africa, and there was a guy walking down the road, and he had his dog just slightly behind him. No leash, no control, not even a collar on his dog, but the dog was there. I put my hand up, I said hello to him in the local language, and he stopped and he replied back to me. I then walked up to him. His dog stopped perfectly behind him, sat down and waited for him. And what I asked him was, how do you train your dog so nicely? And he goes, and he was like confused, like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, how do you have the dog to listen to you so nicely? And he looked at the dog and he goes, well, we just speak nicely. I go into the forest, the dog follows me. I ask the dog to move, he moves. I'm like, oh, so we're asking, we're not instructing. And this is mutual respect. Time spent together counts. I'm going to say that again. Time spent together counts. I have 6 dogs. Every afternoon, I take them for a walk if I'm at home. But they all, hopefully, all love me. But the moment I decide to go along and I take the individual animal with me for a walk out of the property or somewhere else, or I take them to puppy training, or I take them to a client's house, or I do the individual attention that I give that dog for that period of time, all of a sudden I can see a huge difference throughout the day, the following week, going, hey, I really love that. Can we do it again? If I took all 6 of them, they would be running off in all different directions. But the individual, it makes a difference. If you're playing with them, walking them, positive training, training them, and it also reduces behavioral issues. A lot of people come to me and go, please, my dog will not come to me. I take my dog out individually. I spend that quality time with them, and all of a sudden, they don't want to leave me. They will listen to me. They have that reaction because of our behavior, because we are becoming better. Have I ever tried to make a mess up? Have I had a mess up? Absolutely, because I haven't focused. In fact, just this morning alone, one of my dogs, there I am on these blooming cell phone things because there's so many messages coming in. My dog actually comes along and pokes me and goes, hey, it's our time. You've been away for 4 days. It's our time this morning. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Put my phone away, even if it's only for 20 minutes. I go out, I interact, dog becomes calmer again. Think about it. Time spent together counts. We will hear certain things on Facebook and certain stuff about dominance-based methods. Alpha role the dog. It gives them knowledge and who's the boss, okay? We need to avoid this rubbish. Avoid the dominance-based methods. It's easy to ask the dog than to force it. A dominant controlling attitude often causes retaliation, and maybe not retaliation to you, but let's say your child sees you alpha rolling the dog. Then the child thinks, oh, dad can do it, I can do it. Next minute, the dog bites the child because the dog goes, actually, enough's enough. We do not need to force the dog. We need to be calm around the dog. Practicing the respect, consistency, and compassion are key to a good dog and human relationship. So, in summary, how we act shapes how dogs respond. Our values, routines, and upbringing affect every interaction. Through education and empathy, we can create safer and kinder communities. We had and I couldn't show you the pictures, unfortunately, but I'm just going back because it's the most recent things that's happened to me, in the last few days, is that when I was in rural Mozambique, educating these children at a very, very rural school, and one little boy, he must have, I don't even know how old he is, but he couldn't have been stood more than 3 foot high. And he was like, yes, he wants to be, and he was so enthusiastic to tell me about how he reacts to the dog. So I said to him, well, come on up and indicate to me. So I've got a big, big, soft dog toy as such. It's better than, transporting my dogs across borderlines. And so I had this big, soft teddy bear dog kind of thing. And he came up immediately and he stood down and he looked at this toy into its eyes really calmly and relaxed. And he put his hand out and he was just speaking, like so excited to tell me how I should be talking to dogs. That is empathy from a kid who's no more than 3 foot high. It gives me hope. And I do hope that these presentations, these sessions that we've had over the last 3 weeks, 3 Thursdays, have opened your eyes up, have helped you and hopefully your communities that you live in to just slightly improve or reduce dog bites and improve our relationships with dogs. So thank you very much. And I hope you have a lot of questions.
Thank you very much, Daniel. That was great. There are lots of questions from the audience and from our team members, actually. I'll get started and I'll try to take them mostly in order of priority. So the first one was from Chris from Malta, SPCA. He said, another unpredictable group at times are emotionally reactive people, think jittery, or sufferers of some anxiety disorders, think generalized anxiety, panic disorder, PTSD, etc. What advice would you give to an owner with a new diagnosis or a new dog is not coping with? In such cases, I'm conscious, even with my qualifications in human psychology, that it's beyond my competence, I think, to help them emotionally.
It's a really good question and a deep question, because we mustn't just look and if you are coming from the human side of it, we mustn't just look at the human aspect. We must be able to see the dog's concept of what has actually been happening or is going to happen in the future. So we need to be able to help that dog habituate to that human's emotions, behaviors. And a lot of the time we do use pharmacology if we can look at that individual dog, if it's necessary. It's not just simply dog, get on with it, or, which is even worse, and I've seen this a couple of times, get rid of the dog. And I'm not saying that. I say we can help the dogs. Don't just get rid of it. We can actually help them. But if the dog is not coping because of someone's irrational behavior, because they have a mental disease, then we need to be able to habituate and work with that dog in different circumstances. And sometimes pharmacology actually does help. I hope that answers.
Great, thank you. I had a question actually. In the video with the child, could someone say it was the dog's fault? And why did the dog, for example, not get up and leave, choosing flight over fight?
Good, very good question. First of all, what was the poll? Did everybody do the poll? And what was the majority? We had quite a lot.
Most people said the parents, but we did have, I think it was one vote at the last time I checked for the dog as well.
Okay. So if we look at it, I don't mind going back to that slide if you want to, is that, just quickly go back. We can. So if you look, if you can see my pointer, there is a table here. Dog can't get out. There is a baby here. Dog can't get out. There is a person here behind the dog. The dog can't get out. There is a wall. If you look at it really, really closely on the side on the right, there is a wall. Dog can't get out. The dog is trapped. The dog is showing everything at the present moment. Like, please just leave me alone. So that's number one. In my opinion, owner's fault, okay, or parents' fault. However, why could the dog not get out? And in my opinion, you're correct. There is a chance that we could have trained this dog to accept a young child or to stand up and walk over the child, not necessarily. And what actually happened, so I can explain to you, is that that dog did not actually purposely bite the child and savage them and stand over them afterwards. The dog snaps at the child because the child actually climbs up onto the dog's back. And I believe it was actually through pain that the dog reacted. And it was a canine that actually lacerated the child's face. But if we're looking at it, the dog is at fault, but the owner and the mother is at more fault, if that makes any good English. The dog cannot move.
Yeah.
We cornered it.
Thank you for pointing all that out, Daniel. That's very helpful. Chari said it's quite common here in the Philippines, I assume she means, to euthanize a dog after it bites a family member. People often believe that once a dog has tasted blood, in quote marks, it can't be rehabilitated and will become more dangerous. How can I talk to the family about this, and what would you recommend they do with the dog?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it happens a lot in many countries, so it's not just in the Philippines. I think every circumstance must be taken on its own merits. And I find it quite difficult because, you know, animal lovers or extremists go, oh, it must have been the person's fault. But sometimes the dog has just had enough. So could we rehome that dog? Do we need to euthanize that dog? Or do we need to educate the person who got bit about the dog? Or we do most of them except euthanasia. Because if we come along and go, right, so why is the dog feeling threatened by us? In some species and genetic innate behaviors of certain genes, some dogs like biting And I would definitely remove that dog from that environment. But if the dog reacted like this one here, for instance, in my opinion, it's not a case where we have to euthanize this dog. It's a case where we have to educate the child and the owner that don't allow the child to walk all over the dog. But we start again a positive interaction where the dog is allowed to approach the child, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, thank you. So we have a question saying we are running a CNVR program. One of our main problems is when we want to get a pack of dogs. It is easy to get the first 2 or 3 dogs, but then the others start to resist and run when we put their mates in the cages. Any suggestions on the best way to handle this situation?
More than likely, the reason why the dogs are running away in that situation is because the dogs that are going into the cages or the crates or wherever you're putting them is struggling, is possibly making noise. Therefore, they are starting to panic. And that panic is creating a flight response for all the other dogs. So when you are looking at that side of it, is that we need to maybe look at our handling, improving our handling, and be able to control or hold those other dogs beforehand, before we start, I'm going to say manhandling, and I'm not saying that you are, but I'm just saying if, sometimes we have to be faster, we have to pick them up and quickly put them in and maybe stand the gate closed and that noise and things like that. But look at that first. Look at our handling skills. And then why are these dogs not really confined? If we have to confine them, then bring them into a enclosed area, then physically put them into a crate, if you can. I know in some cases where I was doing work in Thailand, where we would be going out and catching dogs and having big crates, and we would transfer the dog from the net into the crate, from there into the vehicle to be transported back to the clinic. And we would have to go along and go, right, let's catch all 3 dogs simultaneously so we wouldn't lose them. But once they're in the cage, and then the net, sorry, and if we understood those 5 F's that we have discussed previously, fight, flight, fiddle about, freeze. Once the dog freezes, we then start handling them. We don't start handling them when they're running away and fighting us. So this freeze moment is quieter, calmer, and much better to able to handle dogs. That's when we start putting them into the crate. Hope that helps.
Perfect, thank you. From Jenny, in communities where dog owners don't commonly train dogs, what would you suggest are the most important basic commands to encourage?
I think this is a twofold question, because it's not just simply the dog listening. I think we should also be able to educate the owners to have a recall, so a come command. So therefore we can get hold of the dog, because hopefully if you're doing outreach work like that, you want to vaccinate them, deworm them, maybe even dip them, do parasite control. And so we need to be able to train the owners on how to interact with the dog, handle their dog in a manner in which the dog actually enjoys. So we're not going to hold it tight and lift its front feet off the ground. We're not going to grab its tail. We're not going to scruff it and hold it down to the ground. We train the owners on how to actually interact with the dogs positively. But the recall, my opinion, is one, because you often have the dog just over there under the tree, and I want that dog to come to me because it's a positive thing. It's more than likely going to get a reward. It's not going to get beaten up or scruffed or throttled, because a lot of times I see people picking them up by the hands, by the necks, and now the dog goes, I'm never going near you again if you're going to strangle me. So I think it's a twofold. Definitely train the owners better handling skills, and that dog needs to be able to come. Once the dog comes, now we actually wait for the dog and create an environment where the dog is happy to stay. So we can go, come, hold your dog, and the dog is on a soft leash. So therefore the dog now is a stay command, next to the owner. That's in my opinion. That's what I've seen in the field.
Thank you. Okay. From Mohammed, sir, recently I have seen a case in which one old person was moving towards his home. On the way, a dog saw him from distance and immediately ran behind him silently. Even though the old person was unaware of the incidents, immediately the dog barked with a slow voice, and the person got furious, followed by the dog, and then the dog ran away. What type of behavior is this, and how can we deal with it?
I think we need to build the picture up a lot bigger. It's only, in my opinion, it's only about 60% there. But let me explain. Let me add a few things so we can understand what we're talking about. Is that there's a chance that there could have been a close by food source. There's a chance that there could have been puppies, and they could have been protecting the puppies. There's a chance where if the person was not bitten, we might have had the older person walking past the dog's, I'm going to say territory, house, community, whatever it was. So we need to be able to see on the reasons why. Do dogs just run up and bark at people? No. Normally it is because its property is there. Its territory is there. Its food source is there. Its offspring is there. Alternatively, how was the dog barking? Did the dog bark up, come along, bark, and wag its whole body and things like this being, oh my word, it's Granny walking down the road. She normally feeds me. And we seen it from a different angle because we only seen it and not knowing the interaction that we could have been, that person could have been having with the dog. And maybe, just maybe, the owner, the older person turned around and goes, sorry, Fido, not today. I don't have food. And Fido goes, okay, and walks off. Maybe that could have been the problem. But I do agree it's attention-seeking behavior. That's answer your question there. Attention-seeking in the sense of I'm giving you attention that there is something here that either I want or I must protect. So directly answer your question, attention-seeking.
Okay, thank you very much. We have one about social events, increasingly being dog inclusive. I see a potential to overstimulate or even have other negative associations due to under-socialized attendees, weather, etc. We have thrown ideas around on how to make dog-friendly events actually more dog-friendly, such as limit on numbers on venue, much like social distancing and quick meet and greet at admission. But it still kind of feels like winging it. Would you consider more measures?
Can I ask a question? And I might have missed that first sentence. Is it community engagement with their dogs?
Yeah, that's what I gather because it's from Chris from Malta SPCA. So.
Okay. Sounds great. Chris, I think you're doing a wonderful job. I think yes, I love it. Absolutely love it. Slightly social distancing. And observe the dogs more frequently. But again, remembering what we're talking about today, human behavior influences dogs' behavior. So if somebody comes in and they drag their dogs, in other words, they're forcing their dog onto the field and they've got a tight leash on the dog. And then you've got somebody who comes in and is totally blasé about what's going on, and they let their dog drag them back to the dog that's sitting there being fearful, that is now creating conflict with the fearful dog, the over happy dog, and something's going to go wrong. So when they enter, we need to be able to have maybe, and this is just an idea, Chris, is that we could have maybe some posters on what the ideal scenario and how we're going to actually control that dog. Soft leash, keep the dog close, make sure you are aware of all the other dogs. I'm just throwing these ideas out because you asked me, and I think it's wonderful what you're doing. We have here, and we've had it a couple of times and they're going really, really well, is they actually have community training centers. So there must be a controlled number of dogs. And the cutoff point actually in this one, particularly then what I'm thinking of, is 70 dogs. So 70 dogs will enter and the gate closes. It's actually at a schoolyard. And immediately they will go in a certain way and have that space until the dogs are calm. Once the dogs are calm and looking at the other dogs with a calmer face and expression on their face, that's when we're allowed to go along and say hello, and we approach them gently. But as we all know, bringing a big group of dogs together, there'll be noise, there'll be barking, there'll be pulling, there'll be excitement, there'll be fear. Wait for all that to dissipate and calm down, and then we can say hello to each other. I hope that helps. And Chris, it's great that you're actually doing this and bringing people together with their dogs.
Thank you. So Anam, what would be the right way to teach kids who always tie a rope and try to walk the dog by dragging him in our neighborhood? In their opinion, they are actually taking him for a walk, but we understand and know that it is hurting the dog.
If at all possible, and because you're here, you've taken a step forward. Because you already work in the community, you've taken 10 steps forward. You know, is it not worth maybe trying to go to the local school with a decent trained dog and actually showing them what is possible first, and then seeing if anybody is, and this will have to be a slower process, but maybe offering a half-an-hour session with 1 or 2 dogs to say, let's see if we can get the dog to walk in nicely. So we encourage the dog to walk in, maybe following a treat. So the dog actually goes, oh, if I walk 3 paces, I get the treat. Then we make it 5 paces, and we slowly show the children that by encouraging the dog to walk forward in a pleasant and a positive reinforcing way, we don't have to negatively punish the dog by dragging the dog forward and taking it for a walk.
Sorry, just to interrupt briefly, Daniel, on that, the same person had posted another question about teaching a community who thinks dogs are haram in their religion, which is like forbidden in a way. So keep that in mind as the context in which these children are also dragging the puppy with the rope. I assume a school probably wouldn't be open to someone bringing in a dog.
Depends on how you, I agree with you, but depending on how you would actually approach it. I've had some very, very good relationships with imam, so the priests, with principals. Even if we have to, you could actually start with maybe a toy dog, explaining that we are only handling the dog at this time of the day. And it's not trying to change a religious belief, because I do believe, honestly, the amount of people that I've come across that actually have and it's normally from the Muslim community, is that they really like their dogs. And if we actually just show them that dogs are good, and you can still go and wash your hands, and you don't have to go along and do what some crazy other people do and let the dog sleep in your beds. Dogs actually can be reacted and interacted with in any religion across the world, as long as they understand why and how we can actually work through it. So I do believe that religion is not a barrier. As long as you approach them correctly and you don't approach with I want to say bad attitude or a Christian mindset that, oh, no, everything must be like fine. And maybe I'm stepping on some tender toes here, but I do believe it. When I was in Iran, I met an amazing imam, unbelievable man, that he actually came with me to the villages. We sat down next to dogs and interacted with them. And he then brought in people and told them, look, we can do it. So from that experience, from my own experience, I believe it can be happening as long as we approach them correctly.
Thank you, Daniel. Now you've made me so jealous. Iran is like on my top 3 list of places to visit.
Great people, great country.
I know, I know. I have a question on how can we prevent dog fights during feeding community dogs?
Do you think we're talking about dog bites and dogs on dogs? Or are we talking about dogs on people?
I assume so. The dogs fighting each other for the resources. That's what I assume. I have no other context, I'm afraid.
I have seen this before. And the last time I saw a community feeding program, they rocked out, got a bag of food, and they just started pouring it, on the floor. Well, what you could do is you could spread it out a lot more. Have also extra food in the bag where you could see potentially maybe a little fearful dog or a problem dog, and go over there and feed that one individual away from it if you're going to community feed them. But spreading the food out, and we do this even in kennels where there's so many puppies and they start now resource guarding the bowl. We would then scatter feed the dogs. And all of a sudden, all that resource guarding goes away because there's so much food and it's laid around the place as opposed to individual bowls. Yes, there's always a concern that we might be able to be picking up parasites from the ground and so on and so forth. But if we spread it out in a cleaner environment, I think that would resolve most of your problems. Might not resolve 100%, but I'm telling you, it'll resolve most of them.
Okay. A question that I get asked quite frequently actually is about puppies and whether you think it's appropriate and effective when teaching them toilet training, basically, to go outside, to rub their nose in their pee or poo when they've done it inside and smack them and put them outside.
Let me tell you what my first instinct is that thank goodness I don't have children, but if you have a child, would you do that to your child? I don't think so. So what you basically teaching the puppy is that every time it goes to the loo, it's going to be abused. So therefore, often you'll find, and I come across this so often, is that dog now is actually hiding where it goes to the toilet, behind the cabinet, behind the chair. And you're going to go, now this dog is like even going crazier. What we must also be very, very careful of, and again, I've come across this, the owner might come along, the dog is going to the loo and gets caught in the act. A big song and dance, no, no, no. Then the dog gets scruffed, taken outside, thrown onto the grass, and screamed at. What's the last thing the dog remembers? It being screamed at outside. Now the outside becomes a negative as well. So how are we going to resolve the problem is that we often look at it to say a puppy, depending on the age, and you, the individual puppy owner, needs to work this out, is that I feed the dog maybe at 6 o'clock, right? It's a young puppy. More than likely, it will need the loo, the toilet, within half an hour. So in half an hour, if the dog hasn't gone inside, and hopefully you are aware of this, you're going to take that dog outside. And you're going to spend the time outside with the dog. Do not speak to it. Don't interact with it. Just allow the dog to be relaxed. And the moment it starts going to the toilet on the grass or in the appropriate place, wait for it to be finished. So we're going for a wee. Wait for the plumbing to finish and clear. The moment it does, with a soft, gentle voice, reward the dog. You can even have treats at that moment. Good. And you're going to give it a good treat. And the dog goes, oh, wow. So I go to the loo. I get treated on a preferred substrate. So it's a lot calmer. It's a lot quieter, but it does take time. Absolutely, it takes time. But what we must also look at is that why it happens inside the house. A lot of the times when we get dogs from shelters or from things like that, the dogs are on concrete. So therefore, the dog only knows that substrate. Why don't we have grass patches often in shelters? Because of a disease problem. So they have to keep everything spotlessly clean. So if the dog has been in a kennel for the first, let's say, even 3 weeks of its life, and the only place it's been to the toilet is on the concrete, it now comes out to our house and it goes to the loo on the tile floor in the kitchen. It's a substrate preference. We have to start changing that substrate preference, and we encourage it by spending time. Remember, it's important to spend time with your dog on the correct substrate that we want it to go to the toilet. Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much. I think we might just have time for 2 more questions. One is from Aminata. How can one prevent their dogs from interacting with free roaming dogs in Africa?
Wow. It's a difficult one. If your dog is free roaming, they're free roaming, you know, birds of a feather flock together. Dogs will come together. But I would certainly look at making sure your dog is sterilized, fully vaccinated, just in case. And why we say it's sterilization and vaccination is, well, we don't want it picking up any diseases, number one. But sterilization won't attract or allow the dog to want to go to another dog if it is either in season or if there is a female in season. So that's one thing we are going to just remove from the equation of saying they don't need to go and search for a dog to breed with. Okay, that's number one. Secondly is your dog interacting with them, or is they interacting with your dog? Now, if it is the other way around, your dog is interacting with their dog is interacting with yours, or the free roaming dog, is that we could potentially create going, no, you're going to stay away from it. And this is where you are going to have to create I want to say a negative environment for those free roaming dogs coming towards you. You don't have to be abusive. You could just be a bit loud, walk away from them, tell them no, that kind of stuff. But if your dog wants to go to them all the time, why? We must look at it from that point of view. Does the dog want to go because of breeding? Does it want to go because it's a lonely dog and you may be going to work or you are not paying enough attention? Time with your dog is important. So we could look at in those 2 different methods of both directions. And I think once you figure that one out, you're going to go, right, can I put a barrier in place? And you will find that it'll reduce. And if you do know the dogs, it's not a bad thing to interact with them anyway, if they're healthy and safe. Thank you.
Super, thanks. Sabrina has a question about your PowerPoint regarding the video you showed with the puppy overstimulation and the one with the attack afterwards. What did you mean by showing the second one? Either that the overstimulated puppy will become more reactive and a problem behavior dog over time, or that the mother-father will attack you to stop the puppy harassing, or something else. Thank you.
The first thing. So Sabrina, sorry if you got misunderstood. The idea was, and it was just a simple video that I found of a dog attacking an adult dog attacking people, is that if we overstimulate the dog and we don't socialize it properly and we just do everything wrong, I'm going to say, is that often what happens is that dogs just go, I saw a cue, I'm not happy with it, I'm going to defend myself. So if we come along and we grab the puppy and we shake him all around and play around and things like that, and then that's it. So it's overstimulating that puppy. Eventually, over time, the dog goes, I'm not happy with that. And my only solution is to defend myself, is to fight back. But if you do it on the extreme opposite, you're calmer with a puppy. You're better off and you start socializing the dog in a calmer manner. The dog will see people and go, hey, you guys are nice. I'd rather approach you in a calm way and say hello nicely to you, as opposed to thinking that I must defend myself all the time. So I hope that clears it a little bit up.
Great, thank you. And I'm sorry to say that despite a few more questions and comments that people have been posting. We will have to now wrap up. We will try to send replies to the questions that remained unanswered in the live session. This is quite sad. I'm going to miss everyone next Thursday, but thank you so much, Daniel, for another very insightful and engaging session. So thank you to the audience as well. It's been great going all through all three parts of Behind the Bark series. Another big thank you to Battersea and of course to Chari, who's been tirelessly working in the background to keep everything running smoothly. I don't know, Chari, again, if you want to just say hello and goodbye to everyone. As this is our final session, there she is. Thank you so much, Chari. We do want to thank all of you who joined us, whether it was live or in some cases have watched the recordings, for time, energy, and your commitment. We understand that time is precious. We had over 600 people register for some of the sessions and great engagement from all of you, which shows the global appetite for this knowledge. We'll be sharing short video clips from the series soon on social media and YouTube, so you can revisit and share what you've learned with others. And I guess until next time, thank you again for being part of this movement. If you do have any more questions or need anything from us, just email us, support@rabiesalliance.org. And I think I will say goodbye to you all, Daniel, unless you also have something you would like to add.
This has been absolutely wonderful, and I'm really happy with those questions, and I'm sorry we couldn't answer any more, but it's been absolutely awesome, and I really do hope that these few little sessions, I mean, it hasn't been very long as in the context, but it's been absolutely great. And thank you very much for registering, listening, and putting up with my gestures and things like that. So yeah, it's great. So thank you very much.
I can see a lot of hearts on the screen. So I think everyone's very happy for your time and insight, Daniel. Thank you so much. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. Goodbye to everybody.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.